It is time to find out the best affordable board game of all time in this Room and Board official deathmatch. Oh, come on. Deathmatch! Didn't even notice I had my special effects crew behind us. Hello everyone, welcome to Room and Board. My name is Chris George, and today we are determining definitively what is the best affordable board game of all time. And this is definitive. Like the other ones, this one is absolutely definitive. This is the best board game of all time, and in order to make sure that it is definitive, any of the losers, all of their copies will be going up in flames by the time this video is over. So if you have a copy of this game, I suggest you put it far, far away from you because it will spontaneously burst into flames if it does not come out on top in this tournament. I wish I made the rules. I just enforce them. Don't shoot the messenger. So if you're new to this series, every month I'm going to be posting one of these because every month over on Discord, my patrons and I, we are voting for the best game of a certain theme. January was space. February was solo. Last month, March, was the best epically long board game of all time. And so this month, I thought we would counterbalance that and go with the most affordable board game of all time. And originally the criteria for this was under $25. And then I looked through a list and I thought, oh man, there are so many good games for under $25. And then we shortened it to under $20. And then we shortened it to under $20 Canadian. So you can get these games for under $20 Canadian at your local game store or order them from 401 Games or Board Game Bliss or Meeple Mart. Those are the three that I tend to look for in Toronto. I find they always have fairly good prices. And so we're operating on that bar, and that is how we came up with this tournament. I'll let the games filter by my head as I continue to explain. So every day for the month of April, there would be one vote on which game would move on in the competition, in the deathmatch tournament, in order to become crowned the best affordable board game of all time, and more importantly, to not be burned, because that is the penalty if you lose. And so every day there would be a vote, and also once a month you have the opportunity to commit an extra vote. If you are particularly passionate about a game and you want to see it move forward, you can commit that extra vote to show your support and push it forward to the next round, because I think that sort of thing is important. There are lots of games out there, and there are games that we like and there are games that we love, and so that is attempting to replicate the passion and fervor of those games that we love. So we do that every day over on the Discord, but because I think it's a fun concept and I know not everybody can support the Patreon or does want to, and that's completely fine, I like to do these recap videos so that everybody gets to participate in the fun. So those are the games. I want you to right now pause the video or write in the comments which game you think is going to end up on top, or predict the final four as well. I love seeing this. I love seeing when people write their thoughts after each round. It's very exciting for me. And make your predictions now and see if your favorite board game hopefully gets to survive. But I was excited about this month. I really was, because if you're new to this channel or you watch it infrequently or frequently, you might know that I am cheap. I'm very cheap, and board games nowadays are very expensive. And a lot of focus gets put on these large games, these epically long games, these games that are hundreds of dollars, that have so many minis, that are just outrageously expensive. And I think we forget that there are a lot of really good games for a very small price point as well. As I was making this tournament, I still had to cut a few that I wanted to include from the bracket because there were so many options. Even narrowing down that criteria to make it less and less expensive, there are still so many options. And I look at this bracket, and I think out of any of the tournaments we've done so far, I look at this bracket and I think, oh yeah, I could play that right now. And that's a wonderful thing about affordable games, is that they are often very accessible as well, and they're easy to get people into the hobby. So it breaks my heart that 30 of them will cease to exist after this video, but here we are. So enough of that. You've made your predictions, and let's figure out what is the best affordable board game of all time. So the very first two games that are starting us off in round one are Cockroach Poker versus Hanamakoji. Starting us off with a pretty big bang. Cockroach Poker is a small little game of bluffing. Everyone's going to have a hand of cards filled with bugs, so, you know, wear gloves or something. And on your turn, you'll take a card, you'll place it face down, and you'll pass it to someone around the table, and you'll say, that card, well, that card's a cockroach. And then the opponent has to determine whether or not you're lying. That's it. That's the game. They can say, yeah, that's a cockroach, or no, that's not a cockroach. And if they're right, you have to keep the card and it gets placed in front of you. If they're wrong, they have to keep the card and they have to pass the card from their hand. Or they can choose to look at the card if they don't think they can read your poker face. And they say, okay. And then they pass it to someone else. And they can say, yeah, this is a cockroach. Or they can change it. They can say, nah, this is a fly. And then it's up to a showdown between the other two people. The first person to get four of a kind in front of them loses. That's it. One loser. Everyone else is a winner. You're going to pick on the loser as much as you can. But it is up against Hanamakoji, which kind of pioneered the I cut, you choose mechanism, which is basically that I'm going to make a choice. I'm going to have this slice of cake, and I'm going to cut this slice of cake in half, but my opponent gets to pick the piece. So obviously, if I cut it, it's not about cake, it's about geishas. This is just for the example to make the mechanism make sense. So if you don't make a good enough trade-off to your opponent, they're obviously going to take the bigger slice of cake. It is a two-player game where you're competing to earn the favor of 7 illustrious geishas by collecting each geisha's preferred performance item. So this geisha loves to play the guitar to serenade her patrons or whatever. To serenade my patrons, I just sing them messages as Slippery Jim. I suggest you would go with the geishas, honestly. But yeah, the whole game boils down to, on your turn, you're going to make a decision of 2 things, and then your opponent gets to choose which one, and you get the leftover one. And these 2 games are both very well acclaimed. I've talked about them for too much already for the length of the video and the amount of games that we have to get through, but I'm excited because both of these are really cool. I actually own a copy of Cockroach Poker, and so I was pulling a bit for Cockroach Poker to win, and so naturally, Cockroach Poker, they didn't win. And Hanamakoji moves on in a 12-9 vote. There were some extra votes used to push Hanamakoji over the top and to make sure that I never get to play my copy of Cockroach Poker anymore. So into the burn bin for you, my friend. Goodbye, my friend. Moving on to our next matchup, we have Point Salad versus Dutch Blitz. And Point Salad is a game that I've heard so much about. It's a card drafting game where you're trying to earn points in hundreds of ways, but basically you're going to try to get all the ingredients you need to form a beautiful little salad, and every card you pick can get you more points provided that you combine them with the correct other cards that are out there. So on the back of every card, it'll show you, okay, this one gets points for however many onions you have in your patch, but you lose points for however many carrots you have in your salad. And so you're going to try to get the most points you can by drafting these veggies. Whereas Dutch Blitz is basically speed solitaire. Everybody has a deck of cards and a pile of 10 cards, and your goal is to get all of your cards into the middle before everybody else's. And you play cards into the middle in ascending order, so from 1 to 10 in the 4 different colors. But anyone can play on card piles in the middle. So I might put a yellow 1 out there, and you'll put a yellow 2 out there, and then I'll put a yellow 3 out there. And then Gertrude will put a yellow 4 out there. But you're doing this wildly as fast as you can because you want to get rid of all your cards as fast as possible. You also have these 3 little piles that you can use to arrange cards and a deck of cards that you're flipping through 3 at a time to try to put more cards in the middle. Every card you put in the middle, you get a point for. Every card you have left over in your stack, you lose points for. Dutch Blitz is another game that I own. This is the expansion pack, but you can get the main game, which is green, or the expansion, which is blue. They're the exact same thing. You just get the packs of cards. They just have different symbols on them so that you can play with up to 8 people if you have both. Dutch Blitz is a game that I love. I love this game so much. I am pulling for it to succeed in this tournament. So let me just check the votes, and Point Salad moves on in an 11-7 vote. When I check the votes now, it's 12-9 still for Point Salad. And I'm beginning to really regret this whole burn all of the games that lose thing. But you know what I'm not? You know what I am not? I'm not a liar. Point Salad moves on. I don't know how Point Salad moves on. Dutch Blitz is so good, but it is definitive that Point Salad is better. Oh my god. This is heartbreaking. But I'm sure my losing streak won't go on forever. I hope. Let's move on to round 3. And in round 3, we have the Fox in the Forest versus Targi, or Targi. I think it's Targi. And thankfully, I'm safe here. I don't own either of these games, but I know they are fantastic, and I really want to try both of them out. The Fox in the Forest is a 2-player trick-taking game, where you're playing cards and winning cards, but the goal of the game is to win by just enough. You don't want to blow out your opponent. You want to win by just enough to take the majority of the tricks. And I think the balance of trying to thread that needle sounds like a really fun one. Now in Targi, you're gonna have a board of cards. It's like a 5x3 grid or 5x4 grid or whatever it is. And you're gonna be putting your little meeples on the outskirts of the cards. And basically what you're trying to do is pinpoint cards that you get to use. So if I put my meeple here and here, I'll then get to use this card. And you go around the board, you and your opponent. It's another 2-player game. You go back and forth playing these little meeples, and then you get to execute the actions on the cards in the middle. And you get points mostly by the cards that you take. You're gonna wanna get sets and whatever. So it's trick taking versus strategic worker place. And this one was a tie. It came down to a tie at the deadline. I had to extend the time. Usually I wait until 12 o'clock the next day and then post the results or close the voting. When the vote was called, it was 12-11 for the Fox in the Forest. The Fox in the Forest takes it in a very close vote. Targi is out of the competition and off of all of your shelves. So be careful, put it in the burn bin. Let's keep moving forward. I know I take so long in the initial rounds, but then it gets quicker as the rounds proceed because we know what all the games are. I want to make sure that you have a general idea of what the game is so that you can look into it if you feel like it looks cool. And honestly, I think almost every single one of these games looks really cool. So don't get all of them or else, then they no longer become affordable. But there are some really cool ones that I know I personally have on my target list, my Targi list. And our next round, we have Citadels versus the Crew. Now, Citadels used to be more expensive than it is. There was a more expensive version. It was about 30 bucks, but they recently have come out with a Citadels Classic Edition. And I say recently, it was like a few years ago, but I loved that they did that because it moved this price point down to what I hoped it would be. I can get it for like 15 bucks Canadian. And Citadel is a game about building a number of buildings in front of you, but the way you're going to do that, each round you're going to get a hand of cards and you choose which role you're going to become, and then you pass the cards. And so the first player gets a lot of choice and the last player doesn't get hardly any choice, but you're going to be playing these cards and then you count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you enact those roles in order. But the first role that you enact is the assassin, who can kill any other role and make it so that they cannot act for the rest of the round. The second one is the thief and gets to steal money from players. So you have these really interactive roles that are going to drastically change how the game is played. And sure, you may want to take that really good role, but you don't know if someone else is going to block it or not. So it's this really interesting balance of getting additional coins and using those coins to pay for buildings. And you want to get buildings of all different types and you score points for the buildings that you make. Really fun game, and I'm really glad that it is at this price point. The other edition had an alternate set of cards, but whenever I played Citadels, I just played with the regular cards that come with the game. I didn't feel the need to play with the other roles because it's one of those games where you know the roles and you know how they interact and you don't necessarily feel like you need to play with the other roles because all the buildings give you various things as well. I don't own this, but my friend owns it, so I really like Citadels, but it is up against the Crew, which has boomed in popularity over the last couple years. The Crew is another trick-taking game. Lots of card games in this bracket because obviously it is more affordable to create a card game rather than a miniature game. But this is a cooperative trick-taking game where you're all trying to complete a series of missions and get cards in the right order. So if you ever played euchre or bridge or whatever, this should feel familiar to you. This is actually a game that my parents really enjoy because we grew up playing bridge with them. And so I recently gave it to them for Christmas and they've been loving it. And that's it. There'll be 50 different scenarios or missions that you can work your way through, and they kind of get progressively harder as you go on, but you can keep on playing them over and over because it's cards. Cards get shuffled. You don't know who's going to have to win the 9 of pink every time, so it's going to balance. So this is a tough one. For me, I'm pulling for Citadels to win here because I really like it. And so with that in mind, obviously the crew moves on in a 17-5 vote. But I've got faith that I may get to keep a game later. Next round, we have Bang the Dice Game versus Bananagrams. So Bang the Dice Game is the dice version of the game Bang, which I do actually own and which I have been meaning to get rid of, honestly. It's a social deduction game. Everyone has a hidden role. I might be the sheriff, you might be the vigilante or the outlaw, and all the sheriffs, well, the sheriff is known, but all the deputies and the sheriff are on a team and you're working together to try to shoot the outlaw. And the outlaw is trying to blend in and kill the sheriff, basically. But the difference between this and the card game is that you have dice. That's basically the only difference. You're going to roll your dice at the beginning of your turn and that'll determine what sort of actions you can take. Versus in Bang, the original, you would just have cards that would do it. Now, Bananagrams has been around for a long time and it's basically speed Scrabble, if you hadn't heard of it. It just squeaks in at $19.99 under the bar for this bracket. And I think I got Bananagrams as like one of my first games when I first started getting interested in the hobby. I still have my copy of Bananagrams and I really like Bananagrams, and I'm obviously not a huge fan of Bang. So I am hoping that Bananagrams certainly doesn't lose in a 12-6 vote. It would be great if Bananagrams could move on and not, wait, what are you doing? What are you doing? Not move, why is this out? Oh, Bang the Dice Game moves on in a 12-6 vote. And this is getting full. Next round, we have Love Letter versus Letter Jam. And Love Letter is another fairly well-known affordable game. The goal of the game is, of course, to get your love letter to the princess. And if you get your love letter to the princess the most, then she, of course, will fall in love with you. It doesn't matter the content of that letter. It just matters the volume. All she cares about is knowing that you've sent her a letter. Could be anything. She just wants people to know that she exists. The structure of the game is everyone has a card in their hand. And on your turn, you're going to draw another card, and you're going to choose which one of them to play. So you keep one card and you play the other card and do its effect, which will usually help you eliminate other players. And then at the end of the game, whoever's not eliminated reveals their card and the highest number wins. So the princess is number 8, so obviously you're able to give your letter directly to the princess rather than giving your letter to a guard who's like, this is just my first day. I don't even know who I'm supposed to be protecting. So that's Love Letter, but it's up against Letter Jam, which I played recently for the first time, and it is very good. This is a cooperative word game. This one people find hard to explain, but the basic premise is you're going to have a word, a 5-letter word. Each letter is on its own individual card. You're going to shuffle up those letters, and then you are going to reveal them to the other players. You don't know what letters they are, because your neighbor makes the word to start. But everyone else will get to see your letter. And then the group has to give clues using everybody's letters in order for people to figure out what letters they have. So if I see the letters L-O-V-E, I would put a number 1 token in front of L, 2 in front of O, 3 in front of V, 4 in front of E, and then everyone else would see 3 of those 4 letters and they would try to figure out, okay, is it love? Is it lobe? Well, it could be love or lobe. The V probably would figure it out, but if is it love? Is it dove? Is it cove? And so you have to deduce what letters you have, and everybody has to figure out what letters they have and what their original word was in a certain number of clues. It's really good. I don't own it, but I do want to pick it up. I do own Love Letter. Of course, I think you can see where this is going. And it is that Love Letter moves on in a 12-10 vote, which actually, even though I own Love Letter, I think Letter Jam is a better game, and I wanted Letter Jam to win. So I am 0 for how many? I don't know. This is turning out to be a horrible bracket for me. but I just think Letter Jam, I think, out of all of the games on this list, is my #1 purchase target. I had so much fun playing it, but I really like word games, and I love that cooperative element to it, and I love that deduction element to it. It's very much like Hanabi, which we will see further on this list. But Love Letter moves on in a very tight 12 to 10 vote. Extra votes were used on both sides to propel the passion for Princess Annette forward. But hey, I get to keep a game so far, so that's pretty good. Moving on, next we have the Exit series, Exit the board game versus Schon Clever, or the Schon Clever series, because there's also Twice as Clever and Thrice as Clever, or whatever it's called. And so the Exit series, these are escape games in a board game form. These are one-time use games, but they clock in under 20 bucks. And so there's a whole series of different adventures you can go on, and you're gonna pull apart the pieces, and you have to figure out the combinations and how things link up and what the different passwords are for all these different clues that will emerge. And you're gonna cut things, you're gonna rip apart the box. They really do their best to emulate the physical, tactile nature of escape game experiences. Now, Schon Clever is a roll and write where you're just going to roll some dice and you're going to try to use the different colors of dice, the numbers that are produced by them. You choose which colors you want to use and basically try to combo the different mini games of all the colors in ways to make bigger numbers, and the most points wins. You're going to get points for everything. Anytime you put down a number, you're going to get a point, and you're just trying to multiply everything as effectively as possible. Both are fun. I remember the first time I played the Exit series, I thought it was one of the best things in the world. It was like the Haunted Castle or something. It was so fun. I was like, these things are the greatest things to ever be made. It was a fantastic time. And then we did our second one. I think this was the Science Lab one, and it was just a real letdown. So there's a wide range, I feel, of quality in the Exit series, and that letdown from the Science Lab one made me not that interested to keep on getting them, whereas I found the quality from the Unlock series, they're a bit more expensive because they now come in these like triple pack boxes. Again, this one-time use, I kind of now veer towards that for an escape room experience because I find them to be about the same, and I like that they aren't one-time use, that you can just put the cards back together and you can sell it off or you can give it to somebody else. So from a sustainability standpoint, that's cool. But the Exit series, they are fun. I've played Twice as Clever. I haven't played Schon Clever, but I really enjoyed my play of Twice as Clever. So I guess if I had to choose between the two, I'd probably pick Schon Clever, which is why, of course, Exit moves on in a 12 to 6 vote. I just can't catch a break. But I still have hope as we move now to the other side of the bracket with Food Chain Island versus The Mind. Now, Food Chain Island is the only button shy game that was included in this list. If you're unfamiliar, button shy games, they all are a very minimal card count. They're all able to kind of fit into this slim bifold wallet. You can put it in your pocket. You can take it on the go. They're known for this style of game. And therefore, pretty much all of them can fall into this price point. But Food Chain Island, the premise of this is you're going to have a grid of 16 animals, and the goal of the game, you shuffle them up, you deal them out, is to only have one animal remaining. So you get to move one card over and eat an animal, and you want all the bigger animals to eat the smaller animals. By the end of the game, you just have one animal left. This is a solo game, so you can only play it by yourself, or you can play with someone else and you just say, what should we do? I mean, most solo games you can play with someone else if you just want to participate together. Do what you want. But that's the premise of Food Chain Island, and it is versus The Mind. Now, The Mind really blew up a few years ago, and the goal of the game is to go through a series of rounds, basically putting cards down from 1 to 100. But you're not allowed to communicate whatsoever. You put your hands down together, you feel the energy around the table, you break, and you go, okay. And there cannot be any verbal communication or communicating about the cards in your hand. You can't be like, oh, I have number 14. Anyway, no, like then that wouldn't be a game. So you're faced with trying to figure out and feel it out as a group. What card do we put down? Are we in sync? And go through progressively getting rid of all the cards in your hand as you go through the stages. Basically every stage you get one more card. So you start with only one card in your hand, and then by the end you have 10 cards in your hand that you're trying to feel out between people and still do it in the correct order. I enjoy the Mind. I don't own the Mind, I actually own the Mind Extreme. It's the same game, but you're doing it in 2 piles at the same time instead of 1. And you're also potentially putting things face down as well, so you really just have to sense out what everybody's doing. But obviously, I'm partial to my copy of the Mind Extreme. Even though Food Chain Island sounds fun, I'm not a huge solo gamer, so, I mean, I don't even know why I'm keeping up this charade. You know it's coming. You know it's coming. Food Chain Island moves on, 16-7. I know it's the Mind Extreme and I could get out of it because of a loophole, but you have to suffer, I have to suffer. Next round, Sushi Go versus Hanabi. Now, Sushi Go is another card drafting game, which is I have a hand of delicious sushi, I'm gonna pick one, put it in front of me, and pass the rest. Then you reveal, and you're trying to get, again, similar to Point Salad, the best combination of things. You wanna get the most dumplings, you want to just play the best sushi pieces. If you play a wasabi piece, your next sushi piece will be worth double. But will you get the sushi pieces passed to you to make it worth your while? Who knows? So there's a number of different cards that you have to play, and it's just a light, really good intro to card drafting. If that idea of picking a card and then passing along appeals to you, solid art, really solid design. But Hanabi is, again, that cooperative deduction game we were talking about earlier, very similar to Letter Jam. The goal of Hanabi is you are going to be playing cards from your hand, but you cannot see them. Everyone else can see them, you cannot see them. So on your turn, you can either play a card, discard a card to get an additional clue back, or use a clue token to tell someone something about their hand. You can say, hey, these 2 cards are 2s, or these 2 cards are blue. It has to be a number or a color, and hopefully you've given them enough clues to deduce what's in their hand so that they can play the cards in ascending order, 1 to 5, to create the most beautiful fireworks display of all 5 different colors. I love Hanabi. I do. My girlfriend and I play this all the time. It's a great 2-player game. I think Sushi Go is fine. It's just like a nice package. It's what I love about Hanabi is that when you figure something out about how to give clues, that's a very exciting part of it. And I guess that's it. I try to not tell people any strategy tips when I play Hanabi with them. And I guess I never will have to tell them any more strategy tips because it's burnt. I lose again. I cannot believe that I lost that round. Hanabi is another one that I really enjoy. But Sushi Go moves on in a 13-6 vote. All right, next round. Let's keep it speedy. I'm gonna really try to speed it up for these next few. We have Lost Cities versus Coup. And the great part about this one is that I guarantee get to keep a game. Or it should be this, because Lost Cities will be there. I don't know where they're gonna be. That'll be the right. Yeah, Lost Cities. Now, Lost Cities is a game basically just about math. You have these different cards with different colors on them and different values. And on your turn, in your hand, you're gonna play one of these cards in front of you into your area, or you're going to discard it into an area that your opponent can pick up from. And you have to build in ascending order again from 1 to 10, but whenever you commit to going on a quest, basically playing a certain color of this cards, you're already down -20 points. So you need to be able to get enough cards to offset that negative point value. The push and pull here is how many cards do I need to get? Will I get the right cards to make myself go into the positives? Should I wait so I can get some investment cards, which will double my total score, but it also doubles my negative score if I don't make enough? You're trying to outscore your opponent. Coup is a game all about bluffing. You have 2 rolls in front of you. These function as your lives, and the actions on these cards are the only things that you are actually allowed to do. They can be taking extra coins, they can be stealing coins from someone else, they can be paying coins to kill someone around the table, or blocking that, or trading your cards. As long as nobody calls you on your action, that action goes through. If somebody calls you on your action and you were lying, you lose one of your lives. You don't get to do that action. If somebody calls you on your action and you were telling the truth, they lose one of their lives. It's put up or shut up, the board game. And your goal is to be the last person standing. It plays so quickly. Coup is a game that I recommend all the time. Lost Cities, I think, is fun. It doesn't get me excited to play. And I like math. I like math in games. But this one feels a little bit too abstract. And I think my downside with Lost Cities is I find that I know I have a 50% chance of getting the card that I need to. You do, because you're constantly drawing from the deck after you play a card. And so I'll just say, yeah, it's 50-50. I'll get the card that I need to win, or 50-50, I'll get the card that I will need to lose, you know, or my opponent will get the card. The timing out is still interesting, but yeah, so one of these has to go in the trash. I want Coup to win, and I am so thrilled that it has. I got one! I got one! Oh, happy day. Lost Cities, I don't mind burning. Honestly, I would be fine getting rid of Lost Cities, fairly certain. The reason why I haven't is because it's a small enough box that it can fit on my shelf nicely. But Lost Cities goes in the burn bin. Coup moves on. Oh, what a glorious victory it is. It was a close vote. There were lots of extra votes used, but luckily Coup moves on in a 14-11 vote. What I do love about this bracket and this tournament, last month's I found was fairly one-sided the way the votes fell, at least for the first round. This one, it's almost always split down the middle, and I think that speaks to how good all of these games actually are. Or were, because they no longer exist. Next round, Rolling Realms versus Silver and Gold. Now these are both roll and writes, or things where you write things down on a piece of paper and you try to get the most points. Now Rolling Realms was created by Stonemaier Games in the pandemic. They were like, hey, we want to make a game that everybody can play and you don't need to be next to each other to do it. So they made Rolling Realms, and then people liked it enough that they actually decided to print a version of it. And this game is played in a series of mini games. You're going to roll 2 dice, and then you're going to use those numbers on your realms, your 3 little mini games. And there are a number of realms that come with the game as well. So there's some variability there, and you just need to use those numbers effectively as possible, and each thing gives its own new twist on the genre. Now, Silver and Gold, this is a flip and write. And basically you'll be flipping over different shaped pieces, polyomino pieces, Tetris pieces. And you'll have your own little treasure maps that you're trying to completely cover and completely survey, because basically you're at the beach digging for silver and gold. And so you want to cover up these treasure maps as quickly and efficiently as possible with the pieces that get turned up, and every time you do, you score points. And both of these look fun. I don't own either of these, but in the true spirit of this bracket, one of them has to move forward. And of course, since this is the affordable bracket, we do not need Silver and Gold anywhere in existence. We want lint and copper. Silver and Gold is too rich for us today, this month, and so Rolling Realms moves on in a pretty dominant 15-8 vote. Now, next round we have Red 7 versus Set. And if you're thinking, what are these games? Well, that's what everybody in the Discord was thinking as well. But they're 2 very interesting games. Red 7 is a card game where you are playing basically 7 games at the same time. All the cards will have different colors, and depending on the round, you're trying to win different things or win different tricks. If you're playing in the red round, well, the highest card would win. And so if you're not winning the current game at the end of the turn, you're out and you'll be eliminated. So it's juggling these cards and all these different games that you have to split your focus on and divide your resources on. Now, Set is a speed game, a Mensa selects speed game where you have a grid of 12 cards and it is your goal to make a set of 3 cards. Now, it's a bit complicated, so I'll put some graphics up in the Set area. Each card has 4 distinct characteristics on it. So it has a number, it has a shape, it has a color, and it has what I call a texture. And in order to make a set, each individual characteristic has to either be the same or different. So you can have the same color, different number, different texture, different whatever the 4th one was. Shape. Different shape. So in this example, which is on the back of the box, you could use the red hollow oval 1, 2, and 3, that would be a set because they're all red, they're all ovals, they're all hollow, and they're all different numbers. That's kind of an easy one to see. They're more difficult when they're all different. So in this, the purple diamond with lines in it, with the 2 red ovals that are empty, with the 3 solid squiggles that are green, that would be a set because they're all different numbers, all different textures, all different colors, and all different shapes. So any of those sorts of things can be a set, and as soon as you see something, you say set, you take those cards, 3 new cards get turned over, the person who gets the most sets at the end of the game wins. I really like this game. I mean, nobody else does. A lot of the comments were like, yeah, I used to like set, but if you play with somebody who's really good, you're just going to get demolished and it really isn't going to be any fun. And I agree with that assessment for sure. I see why it's the Mensa game because it is something you can play. You could play it solo, but it's more fun to compete against people. But also, if I'm playing against someone who has a very hard time, I'll generally wait and see how long it takes them to get a set, or I'll go at a slower rate. But it doesn't matter because I can't play that anymore. Set gets burned. People were mad that I finally got a win with Coup and just really smushed it into the ground with a 14-4 vote. All right, two more games, 2 more matches, and then we're gonna blaze ahead into the round of 16. Then we'll really get cooking because I can stop complaining about all my games being burnt because I won't have any anymore. So our next round is Mintworks versus Innovation. And Mintworks is part of this Mint series of games that have a little mint tin that contains all the components. And this is a little worker placement. You're going to put your little mint workers out and take actions, which will get you more mint tokens that you can use for other things. You can become first player, which is always important in worker placement games, where you can build little plans, little blueprints. And the goal of the game is to get the most points. Now, Innovation, which is actually designed by the same designer as Red 7, Karl Chudik, is kind of a quick civilization building game. You're going to be playing cards from your hands, and they're going to give you these symbols, which represents different things in your civilization, and you are going to be building things on top of them so that you can activate them more, but then other players can also use those symbols, so you have to kind of balance that out. And to win, you're going to be competing for different achievements, which you can get by building the right things at the right time. This one was exceptionally close. It was a 10-10 tie, and then when I checked back, it was an 11-11 tie, with 2 people using their extra votes. However, you only get 1 extra vote in the tournament, and 1 player had used it already, and so it brought it down by the slimmest of margins. Innovation moves on in an 11-10 vote. And finally, we have Avalon versus Bounce Off, Travel Edition. The real Bounce Off was too expensive, but the Travel Edition actually falls into this criteria. And if you have seen the past 3 tournaments, you'll know that Bounce Off is no stranger to this deathmatch idea. What can I say? People love Bounce Off. Bounce Off is one of the most applicable games out there. It's a dexterity game where you're bouncing these little balls into a little grid. You want to beat your opponent. That's it. It's beer pong, the board game. But people have been raving about Bounce Off, and so I've naturally had to talk about it because of how much others have been pushing Bounce Off, and certainly not myself. And you will know that in the last couple tournaments, Bounce Off has had to withdraw from the competition to make way for other games because it just wasn't fair. They would sweep the whole thing. One time they got poisoned. It has been an epic saga, but no more. Bounce Off is officially in this tournament with their Travel Edition because it's an affordable game. If they were going to be in any bracket, why not this one? But they're up against Avalon, which is an incredible social deduction game. It's actually called the Resistance Avalon because it is just a better version than the Resistance. The Resistance and the Resistance Avalon are the same game, but Avalon gives you extra rolls. So you might as well get that one always. And the goal of the Resistance Avalon is to have your team get 3 missions to go your way. It's very similar to Mafia or Werewolf. There'll be a good team or a bad team, but nobody gets eliminated. Instead, you'll go on these quests and people will put in either a success or a fail. If there's 1 fail, the quest will completely fail. If they're all successes, then the quest succeeds. And so you have to figure out who's on what team and make sure that if you're evil, you can blend in, and if you're good, you don't put evil people on your team. This is a game I own. This is a game I love. This is a game that I've had countless incredible experiences with, and I know I have been perpetuating this Bounce Off joke 4 months now, longer than that, ever since it came up in our cottage board game. It is my #1 cottage game of all time because Bounce Off is, because it's just, you know, dumb. You can do it. You can make it into a drinking game. It is a drinking game. It's whatever. It's just, it's stupid, but it's fun. But Avalon is an exceptional game. It is so, so good. And I make these brackets randomly. I always make sure that bounce off is at the end of the bracket. For the rest, everything else is generally random. And I need Avalon to move on here. I do, because it's so good and I love it so much. And yet I have been hoisted by my own petard. And people, you know, the people want bounce off. There has been a wave, a bounce off resurgence in the past months, and it's really hard to fight against that sort of hype. This is, we're seeing once and for all what the hype train can do to a person, and can do to a person's hopes and dreams, and now can shift them and pervert them into something just, well, something just bouncy. Every night I miss you, I'll dream of a sunny. I should be happy. Bounce Off has made it past the first stage of the competition, and yet I just want Avalon to be there. This has been a very tough opening bracket, and what's even more devastating is that it was a 10-9 vote. Oh, the world could have been so different. I thought Avalon could have won. Avalon could have been a contender, but when Big Bounce Off puts you in their pocket, there's no escape. And I would warn you that even if Big Bounce Off turns to you and offers you millions of dollars, which they have done to me, to continue this propaganda machine and dogma, I'm breaking out of it once and for all, and I have to say that Bounce Off moves on. Who needed Avalon anyway? On to the next round. And we've made it to the round of 16. Now we're going to really be able to zip along and get to the results of this competition. Drop in the comments which games have been robbed. Obviously, all of them. Let me know if you share my indignation, and let's move on into the round of 16 with Hero Realms versus Hanamakoji. And Hero Realms had the bye. They are a deck builder, a very small package deck builder, where you start with 10 cards and you're going to buy better cards from the market, and you're going to attack your opponents until they're dead, until their score is 0, so their health is 0. Then you win. And as we know, Hanamakoji is I Cut, You Choose. Both are best at 2 players. Hanamakoji only plays at 2. Hero Realms plays from 2 to 4. But Board Game Geek says they're both recommended to be at 2 players. And that makes sense. With the dueling nature, you kind of want it to be head-to-head back and forth, so you don't have 2 people teaming up on 1 person. And in this case, Hero Realms earns its bye and moves on in an 11-7 vote. Next round! Now we can blaze along. We all know the games. We all know what we're here for. We have Point Salad versus The Fox in the Forest, a card drafting point salad game filled with as many points you could sink your teeth into versus getting just enough points so that you don't turn into a villain of the fairy tale world. And I don't know if you knew this, but according to the game The Others, gluttony is a sin. And if you wanted to gobble up all those points, well, now you're no longer able to, because The Fox in the Forest moves on in a pretty dominating 11-5 vote. Next round, we have The Crew versus Bang the Dice Game. The Crew, the well-known trick-taking game, Bang the Dice Game, known as the definitive version of Bang. Everybody says it's better than the original Bang. Everybody loves it better than the original Bang. But you know what everybody loves more than both Bangs put together? You got that right, it's The Crew. This represents our only unanimous vote. The Crew smushes Bang under its heel. It grabs Bang the Dice Game and it throws it into the fire itself. It won completely unanimously. Everyone who voted for The Crew to move on. Even those that hate The Crew, they're like, I don't think The Crew's that great a game. The Crew moved on. I guess people just really hate Bananagrams because Bang just fizzled from this competition. 22 votes were cast. 22 people were able to sign on to Discord to vote. And that's something I should say about the votes, is that the numbers vary because people are like, my vote's for higher, or I'm not on the internet this day, or I haven't played either game, so I'm not going to vote because I don't have feelings one way or the other, and that's great. I think this thing sort of manages itself. And it's great to see. I just always include the voting totals so that you get a sense of how overwhelming the votes were, or if it was a tight match. And this one, well, it was pretty overwhelming. Makes me pretty sure that I'm getting rid of Bang next time I do a purge, which I gotta do because I'm, again, running out of space. But let's keep it moving. We have Love Letter versus the Exit Game. Love Letter, one of the two games that I still have here. Love Letter is the odds-on favorite to win here. Love Letter is such an easy game. Love Letter blew up in terms of this accessible game. I was a bit disappointed I didn't get the one that gave me this sweet little velvety bag, but now I'm glad that I have it in a box because it gives it more kindling. People love Exit. The Exit games are on a tear, and Exit moves forward in an 11-9 vote. This was a tiebreak. This was a tie, and then it swung in the other direction. I think somebody changed their vote over to Exit to really put the nail in the coffin of Princess Annette's hopes and dreams. No one's writing letters to you now. We've switched to email, Princess Annette. So this goes into the, oh, I gotta see Avalon poking out every time I do it now. Hopefully I won't have to do it anymore because I only have Coup, and that's gotta take the whole thing, maybe. But Exit moves on. There's something to be said for the Exit games, and honestly, this push from the Exit fan base makes me want to try another Exit game because I remember the great time that I had the first one, and then the second one was just really unenjoyable. And I don't know if that's because my own personal taste shifted or what, but if you like the Exit series, drop in the comments below what your favorite one is as well. Now, next round, we have Arboretum versus Food Chain Island. And with Arboretum, we have our second buy of the tournament. And in Arboretum, you're going to be creating a beautiful pathway of cards, different colored cards labeled from 1 to 8. And you're creating these pathways on the board, and you want to score points for the cards that you've laid on the board. And so on your turn, you draw 2 cards, and you play one, you discard the other. It's all great. You hold cards in your hand. You have a hand of 7 cards. But at the end of the game, the only person who's allowed to score points for a specific color is the person who has that color left in their hand and who has the highest value of that color left in their hand. So it is this push and pull of how much do I commit to a certain color? Is the other person holding on to that valuable card in their hand? Or do I hold on to those cards when I see my opponents committing heavily to red trees, for example? It's a really interesting decision, but it's up against a button-shy favorite, Food Chain Island. Well, maybe not a favorite. One person in the comments said that they pick Rove, Sprawl, or Skulls of Sedlick, that's probably how I pronounce it, over Arboretum, but not Food Chain Island. So there are other better button-shy games out there, and I think that is what the majority of the group agreed. Arboretum does move on in a 13-6 vote. Next round, Sushi Go versus Coup. It's back. Will I get to keep my copy? Sushi Go defeated Hanabi, which it should not have. Ooh, if this were Hanabi versus Coup, I would be so torn to shreds, but I am not torn to shreds. I am rooting for Coup, as everyone should be, but not everybody voted that way. It was a very close vote. It was a very close vote. It was 13-9 for the winner, and some extra votes were used. And to the victors, go the spoils, go the fake out. Coup wins in a 13-9 vote, moving on to the quarterfinals, and I couldn't be happier. Sushi Go can burn in its little metal tin. We'll use a lot of kerosene for that one. I'm happy Coup stays alive. Sushi Go is definitely a fun game, don't get me wrong. I have nothing against Sushi Go, and I will absolutely play a game of Sushi Go anytime somebody wants to. I just like Coup more. But Sushi Go is absolutely worth checking out. Definitely valid being in this tournament. I think it had some tough competition, and it's a testament to how fun it is that it did beat Hanabi. So, you know, I don't want to knock Sushi Go too much. I only have one horse left in this race. You know, I gotta keep it going. Okay. We're all excited about Coup. Do you like Coup?
Yeah. It's just hard on the memory.
There's a player aid. There's a player aid.
When you're under pressure.
Next round, we have Rolling Realms versus Red 7. And this one should come as no surprise. Nobody wanted Red 7 in this competition. I did. Rolling Realms moves forward in a dominant 16-2 vote. I think the concept of Red 7 sounds pretty fun. I like card games, and I think the idea of playing 7 games at once is a neat one to juggle. But Rolling Realms has really taken off. And the variety of the realms and the enjoyment of the mini games and how it all meshes together has been really resonating with people, and it won in a very dominant 16-2 vote, which impressed me. But enough of that, we're on to our next round. Innovation versus Bounce Off Travel. It should have been Avalon, but it isn't. And since it isn't, I am going to fully put my faith behind Bounce Off once more, because I've had a talking to. I mean, no, I've come to this conclusion 100% by myself, and there's no collusion by Big Bounce Off whatsoever, and in fact, Big Bounce Off doesn't exist. But Bounce Off, it really is the game of champions, if you think about it. You want a civilization game? Bounce Off has it. How else are you growing this civilization right before your eyes? You think innovation is growing a civilization? No, 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 no. Bounce Off, you are literally throwing chunks of earth like the god that you are into this new brave world and creating patterns for people to live on. It's no surprise that the colors are blue and yellow to represent the earth and the water, respectively. Obviously, blue for earth, like any map, and yellow for water, like any map. Plus, innovation narrowly defeated Mintworks in its first round. Like, is it going to take out Bounce Off? I do not believe it will. And you know what's Bounce Off's motto? 10-9 votes, because that's the vote that happened. But unexpectedly, it is innovation that moves on to revenge Avalon. Bounce Off Travel is eliminated from the competition. Maybe if it was regular Bounce Off, it would be different. Or Bounce Off Rock and Roll. There's so many iterations of Bounce Off, which you will be seeing in future brackets. But for now, innovation moves on into our quarterfinals. So we have our quarterfinals. Let's figure out who is going to make it to the semi-finals. Now, the quarterfinal round, it is the last time for people to use their extra votes. And not all extra votes ever get used. You know, you use them if you want them. It's just a fun little game with incredible stakes. So this is the last time people can use their extra votes to propel a game forward, and then the rest of the time it must be won on merit. And merit alone. In our first matchup, we have Hero Realms versus the Fox in the Forest. And Hero Realms, I wish I had picked up a copy of Hero Realms. I had a choice between Mansions of Madness First Edition or Hero Realms, and this was at a trading table that we organized in our little Kadri-Kwan, rent out a house for a weekend, that thing that I talked about a little bit ago on this channel, on making your own convention. And so I had a choice between Mansions of Madness First Edition and Hero Realms, and I wish I'd picked Hero Realms. I really do. I just think Hero Realms looks really cool. I think the battle system and the deck building would be fun, but I picked Mansions of Madness because I hoped that I'd be able to, you know, make it the second edition without necessarily needing to get the second edition, because I know the second edition is really well known and well received. But I've also heard great things about the Fox in the Forest, and I personally love trick-taking games because I grew up on trick-taking games, so this is a tough call for me. I was excited to see which one came out on top. I wasn't expecting Hero Realms to beat Hanamakoji, and then ever since it did, I think it's a real contender. But the Fox in the Forest continues winning in exactly the way that the game is played, by just enough, in a 10-9 vote. So the Fox in the Forest moves on, and Hero Realms, hey, maybe it's a good thing I didn't get it, because it would have been in the bin like the rest of them. Next round, we have the Crew versus the Exit series. Or I guess you could say the Crew series versus the Exit series. All of these function as their own series because the Crew Deep Sea Adventure is just more of the same. And this one, I wasn't sure which way it would go. Lots of people like the Crew, but lots of people like the Exit series as well. The Escape Room in a Box has made that resurgence, but the Crew is so solid to a variety of people. This one, I think, could go either way. And it was a close vote. It was 14-9. And I honestly thought Exit was going to win here, but the Crew manages to move on into the semifinals in that 14-9 vote. Single use only gets you so far. Apparently more than one space in the bracket, but no more than that. Next round, we have Arboretum versus Coup, and this is a tough matchup. Both of these games seem really cool. Obviously, you know which one I am hoping wins, because I'd like to keep my own copy. But Arboretum is a tough competitor. And again, we had a close 10-9 vote. When I look at it now, it's actually an 11-9 vote, which is good because I had to remove another extra vote. People, they try to get sneaky, but the commissioner's always watching, okay? No, I'd love to just give out free extra votes willy-nilly, and honestly, I would for good reasons. But I also take my role as the commissioner very seriously and will burn all of my favorite games to please all of you, because that's just who I am. And with that, Coup becomes the latest victim, the last victim of my collection to fall into the burn bin. Oh, there are some friggin' great games in here that will no longer exist after this video. That's probably why I keep dragging it out so long. Arboretum moves on to the semifinals in an 11-9 vote. Next round, Rolling Realms versus Innovation. And Rolling Realms has been a hit. I mean, a lot of stuff by Stonemaier are hits, let's be real. But Innovation, on the other hand, beat Bounce Off. How do you compare with such esteem? It also won the grand prize at Most Boring Box Cover. Another great accolade for Innovation. But this one wasn't even a competition. One blew the other out of the water. And that, of course, or not of course, I'm going to tell you what it is right now. What do you think it is? Yeah, you're right. It's Rolling Realms. Rolling Realms beat Innovation. And honestly, I'm surprised Innovation made it this far. My neighbor owns a copy. I've seen them playing it, but I think it's a testament to the quality of the mechanics and how it works that Innovation did make it this far, because the art is just, oh, it's so ugly. It really is. But you don't need a quality art. Well, it helps, but you just need a solid game. And I think Innovation is definitely one that I'm going to be looking out for, but not as much as I'm looking out for Rolling Realms, who moves on in a dominant 15-5 vote. So we've made it. You've made it here. Thanks for being here. We have our semi-finalists. We have our final four with the Fox in the Forest, the Crew, the Arboretum, and the Rolling Realms. I gotta add the to all of them, I suppose. Which of these is going to take home the title? Well, we are about to find out. First off, with the Fox in the Forest versus the Crew. Two trick-taking games. Trick-taking games have dominated this category. Trick-taking games have stuck their flag in the ground and really made a name for themselves. Trick-taking games are here to stay, but only one can move on to the grand finals. Will it be the two-player head-to-head trick-taking game, or will it be the cooperative 3 to 4 player trick-taking game? Cooperation versus trick-taking, getting the right order versus getting just enough. And in this case, it was definitive. Even those who said, I'm gonna vote against the Crew, anything against the Crew, because I hate the Crew, I think it's overhyped. Well, the hype train keeps going because the Crew moves on to the finals in a 13-7 vote. Now for its next competitor, we have Arboretum versus Rolling Realms. Two games that I am incredibly interested in, that I think are super cool. I mean, in a perfect world, this matchup would actually be Coup versus Avalon. That's what I hoped it would be. I thought it would be Coup and Avalon, or I wanted it to be Coup versus Avalon, and I wanted it to be Dutch Blitz versus Letter Jam, honestly, because I'm really taken with my one play of Letter Jam. But that's not how it is. We have Arboretum versus Rolling Realms. We have this strategic card laying, card keeping game, creating those pathways versus the various mini games that you can do with just a couple dice using these numbers effectively. And if we learned anything from Ganz, Schon, Clever, people don't like using numbers. People don't just like getting multipliers and that's it. People want to use their numbers in interesting ways, and Rolling Realms apparently provides that. Some of the voters were even so torn they left it up to a chance dice roll. But in the end, if you leave it up to a dice roll, well then the dice are going to come out on top. And it is Rolling Realms that moves on to the finals in an 11-8 vote. So we have our final matchup. The Crew versus Rolling Realms. Rolling Realms is the surprise of the night for me, or the surprise of the morning, or the surprise of the month, depending whenever you're watching this. Rolling Realms is really cool that it is under this affordable price point. The Crew, it makes a bit more sense to me. I suppose roll and write games are always going to be in this affordable bracket, unless we're talking about Hadrian's Wall, which is still, you know, it's not outrageously expensive, but that's definitely the most expensive roll and write I think is out there, although I'm not sure. But I feel like Rolling Realms has been a delightful surprise, and maybe it's going on recency bias, but the Crew also has been a recent addition. These two games have come out in the last few years and really torn up the charts. I see Rolling Realms, and I see whenever people talk about it, they go, oh yeah, I wasn't expecting this to be good, but then they pick up a copy, and that's cool. But I still feel like the Crew, the likely favorite, and Rolling Realms is the plucky underdog. And in this affordable bracket story, under $20 Canadian, only one can survive. We don't go for underdog stories here, okay? It doesn't matter that it should be the underdog who takes out the top dog. No, we go for the affordable, quality, proven value that the Crew provides. It was a close vote again, but the Crew comes out on top in a 12-8 vote, officially declared as the definitive best affordable game of all time, and I'm very happy for my parents' hands because they likely are holding on to it right now, clutching it, hoping that it's going to win, cheering on their favorite, and the Crew makes it as the definitive best affordable board game of all time. Best game for under $20. If anybody tells you differently, you can show them this video and then you can douse them in kerosene. No, you can't do that. You certainly cannot do that. You can scold them. You can scold them. That's what you can do. You can prove once and for all that they're wrong and you're right, because you knew that the Crew was the definitive best affordable board game of all time. And it's a great game. It really is. You can play it on Board Game Arena if you haven't tried it out. If you like trick-taking games like Euchre or Bridge, where you have to work together, it has those great elements from Hanabi where you cannot communicate. You have this limited communication, which makes the playing cards and trying to get everyone on the same page an interesting and integral part to the game as well. And definitely elevates it because you can't talk about strategy. You can talk about it after, sure. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but you have one instance to communicate one card in your hand and people have to interpret what it is. I found the Crew, some of the missions, depending on how they come out or how the cards come out, are less interesting than others. Because if you get an easy setup, then it just kind of feels like rote. But if you get a hard, tough setup and the card distribution is weird, working out that puzzle is very satisfying. So congratulations to the Crew. You are the victor. You get to keep all of your parts. All of these games, these beautiful games, are now on fire. Oh God. Oh, they're burning. They're burning to the ground. Ouch. Oh, take those out of them. Oh, these are, put those off to the side there. Oh no, oh, they're all gone. They're burnt. They're gone. Alas, alack. That's it for this death match. Thank you so much for sticking around. I'm sorry to everyone whose games just burnt to a crisp, but as you can see, mine did as well. It is the unfortunate byproduct to this tournament, but hey, nothing's worth doing if the stakes aren't high. That's why these games put their lives on the line for the greatest glory that any board game can obtain, and the Crew has received those accolades this time. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope you enjoyed this recap. If you want to get in on the voting action for next month's tournament, feel free to sign up for Patreon. It's a couple bucks a month. It really helps the channel grow, and it helps me be able to devote as much time as I do to this channel, which I attempt to devote more and more to every day. So if you are interested in participating in the daily voting, feel free to sign up for Patreon. The lowest tier gets you access. And I am super grateful that you'd be interested in supporting the channel. If not, that's okay too. I will always come out with these monthly recaps every month so everyone can participate in the fun, because I don't like locking things behind a paywall. I don't do exclusive videos because these take me enough time to film and edit as it is, but also because it's kind of the mandate of this channel. I don't have a lot of money, and I know there are many people out there who don't have a lot of money as well and can't afford to contribute, and that's completely okay. Thank you for being here. That's why I do these recaps, so everyone can participate in the fun, and also it's kind of fun to relive them too. It was really fun to relive the tournament all in one go. I mean, I say fun as a relative term. To re-experience the heartbreak was horrible. But yeah, that's why I'll always put out these videos every month so everyone can enjoy. But if you want to participate in the daily voting, head on over to Patreon. There's a link in the description, and I'd appreciate it. That's it for me. Make sure to sound off in the comments if you think the Crew deserved it. If you didn't, I mean, I'm torn. I understand the hype for the Crew. I'm not quite as fervently hyped about the Crew personally as a lot of other people, but it's It's been awesome to see how much my parents have enjoyed it. It's been awesome to see so many people really resonating with the game, and I think it is definitely a fitting winner for this under $20 bracket. But it's awesome that there are so many games that you can get, and good games, really good games, for that affordable price point. It warms the cockles of my heart to see. Next month's tournament will be the best cooperative board game of all time. We will definitively prove which ones get to stay on your shelf and which ones will be burned for all eternity until they appear again in another bracket later on. Thank you so much for watching. My name's Chris George, and I don't have a catchphrase, and I don't have any games left, or I won't after doing these month after month. But thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.